What's up, my know-it-alls? Welcome to a brand new first episode of Star Wars Ahsoka, the brand new series that just dropped on Disney Plus tonight, and it's a Tuesday night.
So, at night, I can't believe this.
I know.
If we yawn, it's a little late here.
Totally.
Eastern time.
No, but we're down, man.
They're used to us yawning anyway.
Yeah, I'm excited. This was so much fun. It was interesting. Up front, I'm going to say I watched Rebels the first 2 seasons. So right before Ahsoka jumped in and came in real big, and then life and everything else just kind of took over, and I never really got a chance to kind of catch up on it. So I myself, just like when I was doing the 7 Things to Know video, I was really writing that as part of my own research and learning a little bit more about the characters themselves. Now, obviously, you're a Star Wars fan, but you were a Star Wars fan of the movies.
Yeah, my fandom is I didn't do any of the animated series, so this has been real fun for me to learn a lot about this too. I'm actually enjoying this a lot.
That's awesome. So we're going to get an opportunity to do something very unique, which is we're going to be learning along with you guys as well. Many of you who do know and are very familiar with Rebels and Clone Wars, by all means, please do not hesitate to comment a little bit and talk about it in the comments below.
Fun fact us.
Would love that.
Yes.
Absolutely love that, especially get an opportunity to really kind of interact and talk more. But yeah, man. Hey, do me a favor, like and subscribe to the video before we get into this. It helps the channel grow organically and lets people know that you want to be part of the Know-It-All Nation. So, without further ado, here we go. Star Wars Ahsoka Season 1, Episode 1 and 2.
And 2.
Master and Apprentice, and Toil and Trouble. Okay, so normally I go through and I walk through, because there's so much to cover, I will probably in later episodes do more of an actual breakdown. So I think that, meaning an actual recap, so to speak. But I think for the most part, I really want to get into what kind of the overall of what the story is. First and foremost, we get a crawl. We get our first crawl.
Yes, and it's red.
It's right, make it very ominous, but in all this serialized stuff. And I'm really excited. This is Dave Filoni's first solo mission, if you will, no pun intended. Whereas he's really kind of the one in control and in the driver's seat. And for many people, it's funny when we watched the Disney Plus released on YouTube a video that talks about sort of this behind the scenes with Dave Filoni that he did. And I was watching it, and we thought just to kind of get ready. It was about 8:30, and we're waiting for the episode to drop. And as we're sitting here watching this thing, he talks about how George Lucas had come to the set of Mandalorian when Dave Filoni was doing his episode, and it clicked. I look over at Mrs. Know-It-All and I said, Master and Apprentice, that's like the premise of all this. George Lucas was the master, Dave Filoni's the apprentice. Why isn't he going to be there, if nothing else, to wish him good luck and really just... Because George Lucas has no stake in this anymore. No. Other than the fact his name was on the original, that he's the creator. So for him to see Dave Filoni being able to really get in his own and see this character they created come to life so excited in such a great way, Rosario Dawson does an amazing job. I've heard a few reviewers say that you had to, you got to be familiar with this, you got to be familiar with that, or whatever else. It probably would help if I was more familiar with Rebels and Clone Wars, but it does not take away from any of this. In fact, I've seen many movies and shows that start as if you know what's going on. I really consider that the height of trusting your audience. You know what I mean? What do you think?
Yes, I agree with you. Coming into not knowing much, because we're both at a deficit there. It seemed very Star Wars-esque. Right? Stuff that I would get from the movies that made me a fan of Star Wars. These 2 episodes felt very Star Wars.
It's funny, during some of the transitions, Mrs. Know-It-All would lean over and goes, "This feels very Star Wars." and I was like, it does. It really does. And I would even say more, and we both like Mandalorian. Yes,
so this feels more Star Wars than the Mandalorian does.
Really does. And I know that I for one was really, really thrilled by just the level to which they began the storytelling we've gotten thus far in Mandalorian, and specifically when Rosario Dawson first plays Ahsoka in Mandalorian, and then later on, briefly you see her in that one cut scene from Book of Boba Fett where they go to Luke and whatnot. Sorry, spoilers for 2 series that have been out already. And I like I feel her backstory. I feel the weight of the character without even really knowing a whole lot of it. Now, I have looked online, and you can too, there's a big epic scene between her and Darth Vader, Ahsoka, from the Clone Wars cartoon. It was actually kind of a separate movie they did.
You showed me that like a while ago,
Yeah.
so like it wasn't coming in completely mine, but he's like, I gotta show you this. So yeah, that was.
Yeah, it was one of those things that really felt big and epic, and I understood it. And so now we're watching this new series start, and there's all this backstory that we don't have, but you still feel like you understand where we are. And they
like explain it as you go.
That's right. They give you little piecemeal explanations that really work well, and you understand the whole bit. So the thing opens up with it's funny because right after our crawl, which tells us exactly where we are in the story, awesome. I'm so happy to have seen a crawl.
Yeah.
You immediately get, and I'm sitting here going, God, Dave, can you nod more to George Lucas than you did? Because what happens, this big giant starship just comes immediately into shot.
That's the first time I said I feel like I'm watching a Star Wars movie.
No, totally. And so it's a New Republic ship, and they're being followed by another ship, which looks very reminiscent to those Empire with the guys with the three wings, the tri-wings. And so it immediately calls over and says a couple of Jedi want to come aboard to see the prisoner. Who's the prisoner, you might ask? The prisoner is being played by Diana Lee Santo, who plays Morgan Elsbeth. Morgan Elsbeth is from, if you remember, from The Mandalorian season 2. That's the person who Ahsoka had gone to take out of this village that she was at, and she fights her. She's got this giant Beskar spear, and Ahsoka fights her with her lightsabers. It's a great scene. And so, but she'd been captured, and now ultimately was being taken back to the Republic for whatever reason. So this captain guy, Mr. Big Balls, lets him. He's like, yeah, totally. Let's see what they think they're Jedi, whatever else. And he thinks it's just people faking, and they come off, and they've got the hoods and the whole bit. And it's God love him. It's Ray Stevenson who left us. In fact, this episode entirely, the first one, is dedicated to him, which is great. And what an amazing actor he is, and he really carries the gravitas of this role. He plays a character named Baylan Skoll, who later on you find out was a former Jedi student who at the past had learned stuff. Huyang, the Jedi droid, who you've seen,
discovers that.
Yeah, you get to see. What's cool is you get to see Huyang from, and I again, having done my research, I know that he's a character from Clone Wars who was this sort of ancient professor robot droid who literally taught for 1,000 generations, even like Yoda and everybody, how to assemble their. He's essentially the guy who, remember in Harry Potter, the guy who does the wands? Okay, in Harry Potter, there's the guy who does the wands, who's been doing it forever and ever and ever. That's this droid. Forever and ever and ever, he's been teaching specifically them being Jedi, how to build lightsabers. And so what does he do? When Hera finds out about all this, she immediately reaches out to Ahsoka, and Hera's talking to her, and in this, they have this holographic capture of what happened in the shuttle bay, which, by the way, no surprise, the Republic guys don't believe it, and what happens? Dude just mops the floor with, totally. Mops the floor with them.
Come on.
No, for real. And he does a really good job too, as he's and he's pushing forced stuff, doing everything, and really fun stuff that we haven't gotten a lot of late. But so those of you who've been missing Force users and lightsabers, this is the show for you for sure. And so I was really excited to sort of see him in that particular role.
We had just finished watching the first 3 Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
With Billy Friend Know-It-All and
That's
Baby
right.
Know-It-All. So this for Ahsoka starting this.
It feels.
It's like yeah.
Yeah.
It
So
feels perfect. So
it's great. It's really good. And so inevitably Hera says to her, you know who could probably help you with this. I'm busy doing some stuff. And clearly we all know the answer. It's Sabine. She says Sabine can help. And so we cut back to go ahead.
No, I like Sabine.
Sabine's cool.
I like Sabine.
I mean, I was familiar with Sabine from Rebels because I saw the first couple seasons. She was in it then, and so to kind of see that character come to life and in such a unique way, I guess they're dedicating a relief to the cause, and it's like 10 years since the war ended, so they're like celebrating it, and she's supposed to be there giving some sort of a speech. And what's awesome about this relief, it looks like all of the characters.
And I asked him that. I said, I go, is that supposed to look like the characters from the, the animated series? He says like, yeah, that's exactly right. And I said, my word, they did good then.
No, they did amazing. And then of course we get to see that Sabine has sort of jumped. She's not going to this thing, and she's on a speeder heading out to her little communications tower where she lives with what? Her space cat.
There's a space cat.
I know the character is actually in the animations, or at least those kind
it
of
was
things.
in the relief, for gosh sakes. I'm just saying. That
so very
cat,
cool.
oh, it's so cute.
We got a couple of cats here at home, so at the same time, yeah, totally. We got some know-it-all cats running around, and they're so funny. So we're like immediately like, oh my gosh. But so she's going. There's this really cool little moment where she kind of does this move underneath this fighter that had been parked in the middle of the street to kind of block her. It's great. And so when she gets back, she watches the last holographic message that she got from Ezra. So we do get a version of Ezra in this, though it's a hologram that's about this big, being played by Eman Esfandi, and it's fun to see the character realized in this way. And apparently he gave his lightsaber to Sabine, which later on you find out from Huyang.
Sacrifices himself.
He sacrificed himself to. You have to kind of really be familiar with the ending of the Rebels, and essentially, so in order to save them from Thrawn, he sacrificed himself. And so now there's the question: is he gone? Is he not gone? What's going on?
What I like is, for the fact that I didn't watch Rebels.
Yeah.
They let me know what was going on immediately.
Yeah.
I didn't have to be like, turn and pause it and ask for an explanation.
Yeah.
They're doing a really good job not letting fans that haven't seen the animated series feel isolated.
So don't believe the hype when people are telling you that, oh, well, yeah, I have to watch something else to understand whatever else.
No, you don't.
That's a lie. That's a lie. Go enjoy the show, and I think you will. It's such a breath of fresh air, especially when there's been so many things that have that Disney's been putting out that haven't been doing great. But at the same time, seeing this right on the heels of, say, Andor and some other things that have come out made me really happy, because this feels like there's a lot of love put into it. And the world feels lived in, but at the same time, these are very unique characters that I'm enjoying learning about a lot more and seeing in depth. So as they go on there, as she comes to see Sabine, what you find, we go to, the first place we saw Ahsoka before all this, by the way, was a temple. Ahsoka's at this funny little temple thing, and she does this really cool move with her lightsabers where she throws them into the ground, uses the Force to spin around and cut the thing, and she goes down. Isn't she awesome?
It was Ahsoka. It was Ahsoka.
She's so bad.
After seeing her when I was introduced to her in The Mandalorian, this was Ahsoka all the way.
Yeah, no, she's
like,
great.
She's like, moo, she's bad.
Yeah, no, for real. And so then, so she finds this thing in this chamber, and it's a star map. It's a circular deal, but you have to unlock it almost like a fancy Rubik's cube.
I have to say this. It looked very Gallifreyan.
Oh, totally. If those of you Doctor Who fans out there, it was very with the spirals and everything.
Yes.
Totally.
And that's literally the first thing I thought of. That's all I saw, especially when she does end up later on in the episode, unlocking and stuff. So
no, it was great. And so she finds this thing, and as soon as she gets back up top, you see that there are these hunter droids, assassin droids, HK model droids that are there, and there's not one, not two, not three, 4 of them. And so she's got to fight and defend herself. You've seen these in the trailers where she's fighting them and whatnot. And she does a great job, obviously. And so then what do? They're going to blow themselves up, because that's what all good assassin droids do when they're going to fail.
They fail. And
so she's got to book it. What happened to force running? They teased us with force running in the very first, in episode 1, and we never ever got anybody force running again. But anyway, so she runs. You hear Huyang, he's bringing the ship in, and she has to do this jump special thing. Anyway, so they get away, and she's got the little deal, the star map. So then we go forward, and she's got the star map. She talks to Hera about it. That's when Hera tells her about these guys that came and did the thing. And so they're like, Sabine can help you do this, because Sabine's obviously really good. She's an artist at heart, whatever else. She's got the ability to kind of see some things. And so when she arrives on the planet that I believe it's Lothal. Yeah, when she arrives on Lothal, that's where she discovers that Sabine is somewhat, when you can feel there's a tug and a pull, a pull and a push, so to speak, between them two. There's like a tug of war happening. And later on in the second episode, they kind of delve a little bit into it, which is It really does harken back to that old saying, like from that old Zorro movie, where it's when the student is ready, the master will appear. Because everyone's like, why don't you take her up? Why don't you train her? Why don't you do this, that, blah, blah, blah. And at one point, Ahsoka's like, I don't think she wants to do. If she wanted to, she would, or whatever. It's essentially that sense. And the same thing with Sabine when Huyang's talking to her about it later. They're like, oh well, you know, I'll do what I want when I want and whatever. If she really wanted me, and he's like, it's not. Maybe she's not the one that needs to want this. Okay, and that
I was gonna
becomes this
say.
cool through line.
Ahsoka doesn't need to want to train anybody. Ahsoka's being Ahsoka doing her thing.
Totally. No, legit. And not to mention the fact that Sabine's not even that force sensitive to begin with. But it's not that, it's kind of beyond that because she's a Mandalorian, which already makes her special in its own right. And the lightsaber and sort of that idea of Jedi training would just sort of be another cap in that particular, in her training skill set, which I know it's deeper than that. I really do. But in this, I'm trying to think what's the logic reason here that we're looking at. So, once she kind of gets there, she's looking at this thing, and Ahsoka pretty much tells her, don't leave with this. She's like, well, I need to think, blah, 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 whatever else. So what does Sabine do, of course? She takes it and runs, and she goes to her little tower. Now, mind you, she manages to unlock it because, again, Sabine is brilliant. And so she unlocks the thing, she sees the map, and who's waiting for her literally outside her door? A couple of HK assassin droids. Oh, that's right. And a little somebody named Shin Hati. Shin Hati is the apprentice of Baylan Skoll. So in the very beginning, there's two.
And she looks vicious.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't have a nice facial feature about her.
Now, the one distinction I think is important to make is
not nice.
Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati are not, they're not Jedis. They're also not Sith. They have orange lightsabers. The reason they're orange lightsabers is because they have not fully turned to the dark side. So Baylan still holds a lot of very Jedi-esque and considers himself a Jedi. Mm-hmm. In the old RPG days and comic book days era, it would have been considered a fallen Jedi. So someone who, again, who's not full Sith. Anyway, unlike, they're on the darker side, whereas it's funny because this whole thing is like Jedi, not Jedi.
Yeah.
Because you have Ahsoka, she has white lightsabers, which implies she's purified the old Inquisitor lightsabers that she got. But at the same time, she leans toward the good, even if she doesn't want to consider herself, toward the light, even though she doesn't want to consider herself a Jedi. On the other side of that, Baylan doesn't consider himself evil or a Sith. He just considers himself a fallen Jedi, if you will. They're the ones who released Morgan. And Morgan you find out Morgan's true story. Morgan's a sister of Dathomir.
I didn't know witches existed in Star Wars.
I had to explain her. No, so for those of you playing at home, the Witches of Dathomir, they have been mentioned in animated stuff and some other things but they really come from the Legends stuff. I mean, hardcore Legends. Legends being all the old stuff that Disney says no longer canon, and they've been cherry picking content. Well, Dave Filoni's old school and comes from that world. The Witches of Dathomir were a big part of that old Legends story through line. And so having her have that connection, like hardcore connection, I was totally here for.
That's awesome. It's just another piece of Star Wars that I'm learning about.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So Sabine, so you have two apprentices, Shin Hati versus Sabine, because Sabine gets her lightsaber out and she's ready to help because she calls for help and whatnot. And so it's her versus Shin, and they're fighting, and it's a good fight. It isn't like amazing, but it's definitely, you can tell it's two apprentices. And so,
it wasn't an Anakin Obi-Wan fight.
No,
it was,
for sure.
But you can tell that they know what they're doing.
Oh yeah, no, for real. And so again, seeing them, but then the craziest thing happens. Sabine is seemingly killed. Obviously, she's not. But the thing I'm like, what the crap? I couldn't believe it when all of a sudden a lightsaber goes showing up inside of her. Because I'm sorry, last time you saw that happen to somebody who was a Jedi, that was Qui-Gon going down for the count.
Well, to be fair, medically speaking, it was to her side. It wasn't like what Qui-Gon.
Okay, totally. No, for sure.
It's to her side.
Right, and as we all know, the lightsaber will cauterize almost instantly. But yeah, man. So So she's injured, and that's where. So then the episode. That's the end of the very first episode. We're going to reserve and hold our know-it-all index ratings for the very end because we reserved these up as two parts of one part story. So we're going to go ahead and rate them as they were presented to us. So rolling right into the second episode, which is called "Toil and Trouble." Again, playing with that name because it's predominantly about the witches. And what you get is they have arrived. They being Baylan, Shin, and now Morgan have arrived at this very particular place. I call it a translation stone. By that I just mean they have the map ready to be opened, the actual the area itself is. So Baylan's walking around looking at this thing and the whole bit, and he's like, "What is this?"
What are we? Yeah.
And so you find out it is. She's like, "This was built by an ancient race from another galaxy." Now,
What
of
does
course,
that mean? Because you said when we saw that, you're like, "Oh." What does that mean?
for the longest time, in fan fictions everywhere, the idea that where does Star Wars take place? A galaxy far, far away, not our galaxy. So that there's this group of fandom that is always like, could there be the possibility that Thrawn has been over here in our galaxy causing trouble, where he was exiled to? Or is it just another galaxy entirely? Because we know, like, in Legends, the Yuuzhan Vong came from a different galaxy, but it wasn't our galaxy. So, but I love the notion or idea that there's every possibility that they might one day connect the two things. And again, I don't think you need that kind of headache. Battlestar Galactica in its early days tried to do something like that, and I think they also tried it in the reboot. And you don't need to muck up and mess up and have Star Wars happen in actual reality in a galaxy far, far away. I don't need any connection to it for here on Earth. Some people might. I don't need it.
I don't need it. No.
Okay.
It does. I mean, our galaxy is big. It doesn't have to be Earth.
No, for sure. But so Ahsoka is standing not far away, and Sabine is dreaming, and Ahsoka's got this really wonderful ability. Most Jedi can read your mind or at least sense your thoughts, and she's kind of sitting there because she's sitting in the window. Her eyes, she can hear the thoughts that Sabine's having, and finally, as Sabine's having roughly a nightmare, she wakes her up.
Without it makes it kind of sound like that they can read your mind. I think it's more or less like sensing and hearing what's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because or tuning into and then hearing odds and ends.
Sure.
I don't want to come across as Jedis are sitting there, and I could be wrong, but Jedis are going, reading your mind. Sorry.
No, for sure. No, for sure. I don't want to either. So, and what ends up happening is that she wakes her up and she's telling her, she's asking her questions. Ahsoka's asking Sabine questions, and ultimately Ahsoka realizes, okay, you go ahead and rest. I'm gonna go to your place and look around and see if they left anything behind or whatever else. And Sabine's like, all right, well, let me get up and help. And she's like, you've done enough. And I was like, ooh.
See, and I purposely wrote that down in my notes.
Did you?
Yeah, because this was before she asked to be trained again.
Yeah.
And Ahsoka is like, when she's ready, she'll come to me. So I think Ahsoka took the stance of, you're not ready to be trained anymore, so you've done enough.
See, and I thought she was being catty and petty. I thought she was just you've done enough.
For all I know, she's being catty. I mean, I just told you. I agreed with you. Those are two women.
Two ideas aren't mutually exclusive, by the way. It can totally have been both. And so she goes back to Sabine's place, and of course she sees the little space cat. And so then when she's there, she's looking around, investigating, and next thing you know, assassin droid slowly creeps down, but Ahsoka's ready, and she's like, I'm so glad. And she manages to cut the thing up, and they bring the head back to Sabine. Sabine hacks the head, ends up finding out some information, and all signs point to Corellia.
Which I had to ask him, why do I know that?
And I said, from Solo. I mean, obviously everybody from Star Wars will know it.
Will know it, yeah, but I was like, why does that sound... It's not that I didn't know it, it's like I couldn't remember.
One of our first dates was to the movie Solo, which the whole beginning act takes place on Corellia. So it's one of those things where we're very familiar with that planet.
Yeah, I know, that sounded really...
And so the first question Ahsoka asks is, hey, so Corellia, didn't they have all this Imperial stuff? Morgan had like a thing there. And Hera's like, well, yeah, I think, everybody else recycled, if you will, all turned over and became New Republic. And she's like, we need to go look for ourselves. And so sure enough, that's what they do. They go and investigate. And the whole time that Hera obviously talks to Sabine, and she tells her, relax, you need to work on getting well. You need to ask her to train you again. And she's like, she doesn't want me. She doesn't want this and that. And again, she's very mopey. I tell you what, if Dave Filoni learned any lesson, it's how to make a mopey, whiny character. Because Sabine is definitely the Luke Skywalker of this moment. Because Luke was super whiny. Okay. And so sure enough, they go to Corellia and they meet some really crappy hoity-toity exec guy. And the whole time...
And he plays a good slimy character anyway.
Totally
I can't think of his name right now, but the gentleman that...
He was the teacher from Transformers. The one who goes responsibility.
Yes.
And,
Thank you.
I don't remember his name right this second.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Because I'm sorry, my research was for the main characters, not these side guys. And so he's so funny because Hera's having to flex on everybody. He's like, oh, authorizations, classified, this and that. She's like, I'm a general, bro. Let's go. And so she's constantly having to throw her weight around. And
I'm sorry, that droid that told on them.
Bro, Red C-3PO. Red C-3PO
awesome.
was so cool because she's like, what kind of droids do you have here? And he's like, oh, we have this kind, loaders and whatever. And she's like, you have any HKs? He's like, assassin droids? Yeah, I'm gonna have assassin droids. She's like, you never repurposed any to keep on track? And the Red C-3PO was like, I saw one of those recently. And they're like,
really?
Do tell. And dude's like, oh my god. And so this other guy, some guy can't, he's like, oh my god, he's gonna try to shoot on him and the whole bit.
Shootout.
Because what happens is there's this giant hypercore drive. But I say giant because it belongs to a super star destroyer. And Hera properly points out, I'm sorry, the New Republic's not building anything that big right now. So what is it for? A great question.
And we'll find out in a minute.
That's what starts all the drama. And so everybody there in the thing starts shooting whatever. And sure enough, Ahsoka's like, oh, I gotta go put a stop to this. She jumps out through the window. And
Ahsoka style, of course.
Totally
Wouldn't have it any other way.
She gets down to the thing. Hera's in her little ship with Chopper. And they go after the ship, the little transport deal, and they're trying to get it to stop, and it starts shooting on them. Meanwhile, Ahsoka gets down to the floor, the factory floor, and what does she face? She faces not only a couple of assassin droids, but also a dude with a mask.
Yeah.
Who's got I call it an Inquisitor lightsaber. It's the circular one.
That, what's her name, had in Obi-Wan.
Yeah. The High Inquisitor chick who ended up taking I can't remember
taking on Anakin.
Right. And so she's, I love you, Anakin.
Take it on.
No, I know he's Anakin. I know he's Anakin, but he's Vader.
Fine, it was Vader at the time. My bad.
And so I was like, okay. So apparently Baylan is not the only one, but mind you, this Inquisitor lightsaber was red. So whoever homeboy is who's using the lightsaber is clearly not somebody who's worried all that much about killing people or doing dark sidey type stuff. But yeah, so Shin is supporting this anyway. So they're on the ground fighting. Meanwhile, Hera and Chopper are following this ship, and they end up managing to get a locator beacon on the ship at the transport as it goes. It's so funny, dude throws the lightsaber, it spins off. And then as they go, he jumps on his ship. Ahsoka comes through the smoke to see. She sees Shin and the guy on the thing, and it's so funny. She just goes as the thing comes back. I was like, oh, she's so bad.
He boomeranged it out.
Yeah, jumps
on the ship, and then she's like, awesome. You can have it back.
No, Ahsoka's the best. I really enjoyed this. I like it. I thought it's a really good start.
Great start.
Anything else that came to your mind that you was really that you were like, wow, that was amazing?
I appreciate, and I think you noticed it too. There are very subtle, familiar sounds of Star Wars movies throughout these two episodes.
Sure.
The very low playing.
Sure.
You know which one I'm talking about, and if you guys have watched it, you'll know what I'm talking about too. Yep. I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, there's definitely.
Again, back to it felt like a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, Dave Filoni leans very heavy into the Star Wars nostalgia in a good way. In that it's It's the thing George Lucas has always talked about. It's like, it should be like poetry. You know, and he, of course, when the guy sits at the feet of George Lucas learning, then obviously it's going to feel very much like that. And I think he did a great job. My hat's off to Dave Filoni for putting these episodes, putting this together. I can't wait to see more of what comes.
I hope it keeps going as strong as these 2 episodes have.
Right on.
I really do. Since we're done talking about the story, I caught some really awesome shots.
Okay.
Like the way they cut it, like, because you've piqued my eye on the way like things have transitioned and everything. Well, one of my favorite scenes of this was when Ahsoka was pulling in to the one ship.
Right.
The way they cut and just, it was awesome. And then the way they're cutting to, like, there's a whole scene happening, and then they turn the camera, and like there's people waiting to in line now to fight. So it just the camera work in the editing and the cinematography so far has just, I'm appreciating it because you've taught me to appreciate it. But you know what I'm saying? It's like I can see it's good.
Everything in this lives and breathes in a cinematic universe. I heard so many people. I've heard people who are like, "Oh, when are they gonna stop?" It was when stills were released, and people were judging the stills. When are they gonna stop making this thing feel like of these bland video wall backgrounds? I don't know what you're talking about. This thing was exciting. Rosario Dawson does a 40-yard or 100-yard sprint. And she's running on something, and it feels great. Like, you see and get it. I love, like, what you're describing was the cinematic nature of this thing. Normally, for the smaller screen, you get a lot of close-ups. This was a nice, wide, spacious space scene. And
I'm sure a lot of it was also done in the volume as well.
Absolutely, of course. Of course.
Another thing that I really liked, and we've talked about this in the past, especially after the first season of Mandalorian.
Yeah.
The women in here, it's not the women in the Mandalorian, that scene, they earned every right.
Agreed.
Standing there with guns, they fought their way there.
Sure.
The women that are being portrayed, or the females that are being portrayed in here, are definitely not so much earning it. They've already been established. Like it's like there is it's great to see, like, not so much say, okay, you're a woman and you're strong. It's like, you're strong regardless, and there's no more there. You don't have to earn anything. It's just, you know what I'm saying? I might be talking in circles, but
no, I thought everything went very well.
Does that make sense?
100%. 100%. I thought it was great, and I think that I love all the storytelling that's happening. Feels very big. Before we go too much further, so when they find at the very, very tail end of this episode,
I'm sorry.
you get this. No, you're good. I forgot too. No, I'm with you. I forgot also. We get to this, you get to find out where they're taking the giant SSD drive, and it's this humongous looking, what I remember as a hypercore ring. If you remember in episode 2, when Obi-Wan arrives in his little fighter, it's attached to this ring that gives it hyperspace ability. I think this is like a super mega hyperspace gate, because the map leads outside of our galaxy, outside of the Star Wars galaxy, to another galaxy. So it's got to be some sort of a hyperdrive thing that would enable them to traverse that galaxy. And
quickly.
The whole point is she's trying to bring Thrawn back from wherever he was exiled. So again, very exciting to sort of see the groundwork they're building storytelling-wise. There you go. Now you know. And if knowing's half the battle, you're halfway to being a know-it-all yourself. Let's get to these know-it-all index ratings for this episode. I myself... I'm going to give it I think it's a good solid start. In the interests of waiting to see what else is coming, I'm going to give it an 8.5. I'm going to go 8.5 on this. I thought it was excellent. That's me wanting to see more. I want to see bigger. I want to see more things. I'm excited by it. I thought it was good. It's 8.5 out of 10. What do you got?
I have 8.5.
Also?
I do, and that's why I went, and I jumped at that.
Nice, okay.
8.5.
Right on.
Because I wanted to give it a 9. But I think it's just too soon. I mean, it came out the gate doing wonderful.
Yeah.
I don't want that third episode.
We'll see.
We'll see. That's always,
I'm excited. Yeah, man. We'll wait till next week.
We always give it 3 episodes as it is, and I don't see me turning away unless they really start to fall off. But
no,
8.5, a solid one.
Yeah, man. All right, well, listen, let us know what you thought of the episodes. Were you excited? I know that we were. Are you also speculate in the comments. Let's talk. What do you think is going to happen? Especially those of you who are very familiar with Rebels and Clone Wars.
Tell us more. Give us some fun facts.
What do you think is going to happen? I was very happy to see that we got at least a nod to Ezra. So he's he's ever present, even if he's not in the thing. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. I think Mary Elizabeth Winstead did an amazing job playing Hera. And again, having been familiar with the early days of Rebels, seeing that character brought to life like that was really exciting for me. And of course, Rosario Dawson's doing next level work as Ahsoka.
And I just found out David Tennant is doing the voice of
Huyang, yeah,
that's kind of
droid.
cool. I'm a big David Tennant fan. So.
Oh, I love it. So, all right, guys, we'll talk to you guys soon. I can't wait for next week. Never forget.
Everyone loves a know-it-all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.